3 months of travel through slipspace felt like a lifetime. The Iron Wolf Squadron moved through the twisted dimensions between stars, their ships wrapped in bubbles of bent reality. Admiral Kang Minho spent his days walking the corridors of his flagship Indomitable, talking to his crew and keeping their spirits high. The ship was huge, over 2 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to crack a moon. Its hull was dark gray, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Inside, 3,000 crew members lived and worked in spaces that felt more like a small city than a warship. Admiral on the bridge called Lieutenant Park Soo-yun as Kang entered the command center. The bridge crew snapped to attention, but Kang waved them back to their work. These people had been his family for years. He trusted them with his life. "Status report," he said, settling into his command chair. 15 minutes to exit point, sir," reported Navigator Kim Jiseok. "All ships report ready for combat." Through the main screen, Kang could see the other ships of his squadron. 12 battle cruisers moved in formation around the Indomitable. Their escort vessels spread out like a pack of hunting wolves. The carrier Stormhawk carried 200 fighter craft. Destroyers and frigates darted between the larger ships like protective shepherds. Captain Kim Tae-hyun's voice crackled over the communication system from his stealth destroyer Shadow Runner. "Admiral, my ship is ready to scout ahead. We'll go in quiet and see what's waiting for us." "Approved, Captain Kim. Take us to the edge of the system and keep your eyes open." The transition from slip space to normal space always felt like falling. One moment they were sailing through strange dimensions where physics worked differently. The next, they dropped back into the real universe with a sensation like a giant fist squeezing the ship. Kang's stomach lurched as the Indomitable materialized at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Around him, 43 other ships appeared in flashes of twisted light. The Iron Wolf Squadron had arrived. "Passive sensors only," Kang ordered. "I want to know what we're facing before they know we're here." The main screen flickered to life, showing the inner system 40 billion kilometers away. What they saw made everyone on the bridge go silent. Where 3 beautiful blue-green worlds should have been orbiting their star, only 2 showed any light. The third world was dark. "Dear God," whispered Communications Officer Park Soo-man. She was monitoring all frequencies, searching for any sign of life. "The third planet? There's nothing. No signals, no life signs. It's dead." Lieutenant Commander Yoon Ji-hoon worked at his tactical station, counting the enemy ships. His face grew pale as the numbers climbed. "Sir, I'm reading over 300 Vorthan vessels. They've got a full battle fleet here, plus support ships and transports." Kang felt cold settle in his bones. 300 ships against their 43. The odds were worse than he had feared. But somewhere on those 2 remaining worlds, innocent people were still alive and suffering. "Captain Kim, take your ship closer. I need detailed scans of the system." The Shadow Runner was built for sneaking. Its hull absorbed scanner beams instead of reflecting them, making it nearly invisible. Captain Kim was the best stealth captain in the fleet, a man who could hide a battleship behind an asteroid if needed. Hours passed as the Shadow Runner moved deeper into the system. The crew of the Indomitable waited, watching their screens and checking their weapons. Finally, Captain Kim's voice returned. "Admiral, you need to see this." His voice was tight with anger. The main screen changed to show what Captain Kim's ship was seeing. The second planet was covered in lights, but they weren't the warm lights of cities. They were the harsh white beams of prison camps. Massive Vorthan ships sat in orbit, their cargo bays open to receive their human cargo. "They're not just taking slaves," Captain Kim continued. "They're running experiments. My sensors are picking up biological research facilities. The Vorthans are using the Altarians as test subjects." Captain Choi Hee-jin's voice cut across the communication channel from her dreadnought world breaker. "Those reptilian monsters. We should glass their entire fleet." "We need more information first," Kang replied, though he felt the same rage burning in his chest. "Captain Kim, what about the survivors?" "There's good news and bad news, sir. The bad news is that the Vorthans have about 2/3 of the population in camps. The good news is that some Altarians are still hiding on the surface." "I'm picking up weak transmissions." As if summoned by his words, a new voice filled the bridge. It was soft and musical, the way Altarians always sounded when they spoke. "Human ships, this is Keeper Veltar of the Second Moon Colony. We have been waiting for you." Park Soo-min looked up from her station in surprise. "Sir, how did they know we were coming?" The Altarian voice continued. "We have studied your people for many years. We know the stories of how humans fight for others, even strangers. We have been hiding in the deep caves, protecting our children and hoping that Earth's warriors would hear our call. Kang leaned forward in his chair. Keeper Veltar, this is Admiral Kang Minho of the Terran Defense Fleet. We're here to help. What can you tell us about the Vorthon positions? They have taken our cities and turned them into processing centers. Every day they take more of our people for their experiments. They are trying to combine our genetics with theirs to make their soldiers stronger. Admiral, we are not warriors. We do not know how to fight. But we have been watching the enemy, learning their patterns. Lieutenant Commander Yoon leaned over to Kang. Sir, if we have people on the ground feeding us intelligence, that changes everything. We might actually have a chance, Kang nodded. The Altarians might not be fighters, but they were smart. If they had been studying the Vorthons for months, they could provide information that no sensor scan could give them. Keeper Veltar, can you give us detailed positions of the Vorthon fleet? Yes, Admiral. We have been mapping their movements, but you must hurry. Every day they take 10,000 of our people. Yesterday they began moving ships to the Third World's remains. We think they plan to strip mine it for rare metals. On the main screen, tactical displays began showing Vorthon ship positions. The enemy had divided their fleet into 3 groups. One watched each surviving planet while the third guarded the destroyed world. It was a smart formation that would make any attack costly. Captain Nam Soo-hyun's voice came from the carrier Stormhawk. Admiral, my pilots are ready. Give us a target and we'll hit it hard. Patience, Captain Nam. We're outnumbered 7-1. We need to be smart about this. Dr. Yoon Ji-hoon was running calculations on his tactical computer. Sir, I have an idea. It's dangerous, but it might work. We use the asteroid belt to mask our approach. Hit them in 3 waves, make them think we're a much larger force. Kang studied the tactical display. The plan was risky, but all their options were risky. At least this one gave them a chance to save some of the Altarians before the final battle. A new transmission came from the surface of the second planet. This time it was a human voice speaking Korean. This is Dr. Lee Jiwon. I can't believe you actually came. Dr. Lee, we received your message. Are you safe? For now. I'm in the ruins of Research Station 7 with about 50 Altarian civilians. The Vorthons haven't found us yet, but they're getting closer. Admiral, these people saved my life when my station was attacked. They hid me, shared their food, protected me even though it put them in danger. I owe them everything. Kang felt the familiar fire of determination burning in his chest. These were the moments that defined what it meant to be human. When good people faced evil, Earth's children answered the call. All ships, this is Admiral Kang, he announced over the fleet communication system. We came here to stop slavers and save innocents. The odds are against us, but that's never stopped us before. Every man and woman in this fleet volunteered to serve. We knew the risks when we put on these uniforms. He paused, looking around the bridge at his crew. These people had families back home, loved ones who were waiting for them to return. But they were here anyway, ready to fight for people they had never met. The Vorthons think they can take whatever they want because they're strong. Today we show them they're wrong. Today we remind the galaxy that strength without honor is just bullying. And humans don't tolerate bullies. The bridge erupted in cheers. Throughout the fleet, crews prepared for battle. Weapons were charged, fighters were fueled, and prayers were whispered. The Iron Wolf Squadron was ready to hunt. The space station Frontier Watch floated in the dark between stars. It was humanity's farthest outpost, a metal island in the endless black. Admiral Kang Minho stood at the main window, watching distant suns shine like tiny diamonds. He was a tall man with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind him, the command center buzzed with quiet activity. Officers worked at their stations monitoring deep space for any signs of trouble. The year was 2387, and humans had spread across many star systems. They were known throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors who never backed down from a fight. Admiral, called Communications Officer Park Suman from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with quick fingers that danced across her control panel. I'm picking up something strange. Kang turned from the window and walked over to her. What kind of strange? Park frowned at her screens. The displays showed waves of energy, patterns that meant nothing to most people, but everything to someone trained to read them. It's very weak, sir. Coming from the Kepler 442 system, the signal is old, maybe 3 months old by the time it reached us. Can you clean it up? I'm trying, but it's badly damaged. Lots of interference. Park's fingers flew over her controls. Slowly, the static began to clear. Sir, I think this is a distress call. Kang leaned closer. In his 40 years of service, he had heard many distress calls. Most came too late. Put it through the main speakers. The bridge fell silent as a voice filled the air. It was female, speaking in broken galactic standard. Fear made her words shake. This is Dr. Lee Jaiwan of Research Station 7. The Altarians. They need help. The Vorthons came 3 days ago. Hundreds of ships. They're taking everyone. The Altarians have no weapons, no way to fight back. Static crackled. Then the voice returned, weaker now. 50 million people live on the 3 worlds here. 50 million innocents. The Vorthons are slavers. They take people for their work camps, their experiments. Please, if anyone hears this, help us. We're running out of time. The message ended. The bridge stayed quiet for a long moment. Kang felt a familiar fire start to burn in his chest. It was the same feeling he got every time he heard about bullies hurting people who couldn't protect themselves. How far is Kepler 442, he asked. Lieutenant Commander Yoon Ji-hoon, the fleet's tactical expert, looked up from his station. He was a thin man who knew more about space warfare than anyone else in the fleet. 47 light years, sir. At maximum slip drive speed, it would take us 3 months to get there. 3 months, Kang repeated. That message is already 3 months old, by the time we arrive. They might all be gone, Yoon finished quietly. Kang walked back to the window. Out there in the dark, innocent people were suffering while he stood safe on his station. The Altarians were a peaceful species. They looked like tall frogs that walked on 2 legs, with smooth blue-green skin and large, gentle eyes. They had never hurt anyone. They spent their time studying plants and making beautiful art. The Vorthons were different. They were warriors who lived for conquest. They looked like giant reptiles with thick scales and cruel yellow eyes. They took other species as slaves, forcing them to work in terrible conditions until they died. The Vorthons believed that the strong had the right to rule the weak. Sir, Park said softly, should I try to boost the signal? Maybe there are more messages. Do it. For the next 2 hours, Park worked to clean up the transmission. She found fragments of other messages, pieces of Dr. Lee's desperate calls for help. The picture they painted was horrible. The Vorthons had surrounded all 3 Altarian worlds. They were landing troops, setting up slave camps, preparing to harvest the entire population. Kang called his senior officers to the briefing room. The room was small and simple, with a large table surrounded by chairs. Captain Choi Hyejin arrived first. She commanded the Dreadnought Worldbreaker, the most powerful warship in the fleet. She was shorter than most of her officers, but nobody questioned her authority. Her dark eyes could cut through steel when she was angry. Captain Kim Tae-hyun came next. His stealth destroyer Shadowrunner was perfect for sneaking up on enemies. He was quiet and careful, the kind of man who noticed everything but said little. Captain Nam Soo-hyun followed him. She led the carrier group, commanding the fighter pilots who flew into battle like angry hornets. Gentlemen, ladies, Kang began when everyone was seated. We have a situation. He played Dr. Lee's message again. The officers listened in grim silence. When it ended, Captain Choi spoke first. 50 million people. We can't ignore this. The distance makes it complicated, Captain Kim said. 3 months travel time. The trail will be cold when we arrive. Captain Nam leaned forward. What do we know about Vorthon fleet strength in that area? Lieutenant Commander Yoon pulled up a holographic display. It showed the Kepler 442 system as a cluster of glowing dots. Intelligence reports suggest they have over 200 ships. Maybe more by now. Against our 12 battle cruisers and support vessels, Captain Choi said. Tough odds. Kang looked around the table. These were his best people, officers he had served with for years. They had faced impossible odds before and somehow found a way to win, but this was different. This time, they would be fighting to save people they had never met, in a system far from any help. I want honest opinions, he said. Can we do this? The room was quiet for a moment. Then Captain Nam spoke. The Altarians saved my daughter once. She was part of a research team that got lost in the Vega Nebula. An Altarian science ship found them and shared their food and water until rescue arrived. They didn't have to help, but they did. Captain Kim nodded slowly. The Vorthons grow stronger every day. If we let them take the Altarians, who's next? Captain Choi slammed her hand on the table. We're warriors of Earth. We don't run from bullies. We stop them. Kang felt pride swell in his chest. These people understood what it meant to be human. They knew that sometimes you had to risk everything to do what was right. Very well, he said. We leave in 6 hours. Full battle group. The Iron Wolf Squadron rides again. As the officers filed out to prepare their ships, Kang stayed behind. He pulled up the communication system and began recording a message to Fleet Command on Earth. It would take months to reach them, but they needed to know. This is Admiral Kang Minho of the Iron Wolf Squadron, he said to the recorder. We are, responding to a distress call from the Kepler 442 system. 50 million innocents are in danger. We go now to remind the galaxy that Earth's children keep their promises. No innocent dies while we draw breath. He ended the recording and sent it toward Earth. Then he went to prepare his flagship, the massive battlecruiser Indomitable. Soon the Iron Wolf Squadron would jump into slipspace and race across the galaxy toward whatever waited for them in the dark. Behind them, they left safety. Ahead lay either victory or death. But that was the way of Earth's warriors. They went where others feared to go, and they fought for those who could not fight for themselves. The stars waited. The second day of battle brought a terrible choice. Admiral Kang Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship Indomitable, staring at the tactical display with growing dread. The remaining Vorton fleet had retreated to the third planet, the dead world they had already stripped of life. But they had taken something with them that changed everything. Sir, Communications Officer Park Suman said, her voice tight with worry. We're receiving a transmission from the Vorthon flagship. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Kethvar's reptilian face. His yellow eyes glowed with cruel satisfaction. Behind him, Kang could see rows of Altarian prisoners in metal cages. Men, women, and children with their large, gentle eyes filled with terror. Admiral of the humans, Kethvar spoke in his harsh, hissing voice. You have caused me great inconvenience. You have destroyed many of my ships and killed many of my warriors. For this you will pay. The camera moved to show more prisoners, thousands of them, packed into the cargo holds of Vorthon ships. I have taken 2 million Altarians as my personal property. They are now aboard my fleet, ready to be processed. Here are my terms. Withdraw your ships immediately, or I will execute 100,000 prisoners every hour until you leave. Kang felt his blood turn to ice. This was every commander's worst nightmare. The Vorthons were using innocent people as shields, making it impossible to attack without causing the deaths of those he had come to save. Captain Choi Hyejin's voice crackled over the communication system from her dreadnought Worldbreaker. Admiral, we can't let them get away with this. There has to be something we can do. If we attack directly, millions die, Lieutenant Commander Yoon Ji-hoon said from his tactical station. But if we let them go, they'll enslave those people forever. And they'll come back for the rest. The bridge fell silent as everyone wrestled with the impossible choice. Attack and save some Altarians by dooming millions of others, or let the Vorthons escape with their human cargo. That's when Captain Park Jin-woo spoke up from his intelligence ship Nightfall. He was a quiet man who specialized in gathering information and finding solutions to problems that seemed hopeless. Sir, I have an idea. It's dangerous and uses technology we've never tested in combat. But it might give us a third option. I'm listening, Captain Park. The Phantom Protocol. We've been developing it for 3 years but never had a reason to use it. Quantum teleportation technology that can put our special forces directly aboard enemy ships. No need to fight through their defenses. Kang had heard rumors about the Phantom Protocol. The technology could theoretically teleport small groups of soldiers directly through enemy shields and armor. But it had never been tested in a real battle, and the power requirements were enormous. What would you need? The Worldbreaker's main reactor to power the teleportation field. And our best special forces team. Someone would have to get aboard the Vorthon flagship and disable their execution systems from the inside. Major Sun Chae-young's voice came over the communication system from the assault ship Vengeance. She commanded Ghost Company, the most elite special forces unit in the human military. These were soldiers who had been enhanced with cybernetic implants, making them faster, stronger, and tougher than normal humans. My team can do it, Admiral. We've trained for shipboarding operations. If Captain Park can get us onto that flagship, we'll find those prisoners and shut down their execution systems. Kang looked around the bridge at his officers. They all knew the risks. The Phantom Protocol might not work. Even if it did, Ghost Company would be alone on an enemy ship surrounded by thousands of hostile aliens. The chances of them surviving were almost zero. Major Sun, you understand this is likely a one-way mission? Yes, sir. But that's what we signed up for. The children of Terra keep their promises, Admiral. We promised to save these people, and we're going to do it. While the Special Forces prepared for their desperate mission, Dr. Lee Jiwon was coordinating with the surviving Altarians on the surface. She had managed to reach the underground resistance led by Keeper Veltar, and together they had developed a plan to help from below. The slave control collars, Keeper Veltar explained through the communication link. All prisoners wear them. They deliver pain or death if the Vorthans choose. But we have studied their technology. If we can create a strong electromagnetic pulse across the entire planet, it might disable the collars. Dr. Lee nodded as she worked at her makeshift laboratory. I can modify the research station's power core to create the pulse. But I'll need exact timing. The moment your people attack the flagship, I'll trigger the pulse. The plan was complex and required perfect timing. Ghost Company would teleport aboard the Vorthan flagship and fight their way to the command center. At the same time, Dr. Lee would trigger an electromagnetic pulse to disable the slave collars. If everything worked, the prisoners would be free and able to help in the fight. All units, this is Wolf Leader, Admiral Kang announced to his fleet. We're going to try something that's never been done before. If it works, we save millions of innocent lives. If it fails, we die trying. Either way, we show the galaxy what it means to be human. The World Breaker moved into position, its massive reactor charging the teleportation system. Captain Choi Hejin monitored the power levels carefully. Too little energy and the teleportation would fail. Too much and the ship's reactor might explode. Power at 70% and rising, she reported. We'll have one shot at this, maybe two if we're lucky. Major Sun Chae-young and her 12-person team stood in the teleportation chamber aboard the Vengeance. They wore black armor covered in weapons and equipment. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but their determination was clear in their voices. Ghost Company, sound off, Major Sun ordered. Ghost 2, ready, Sergeant Kim Hyonu reported. He was the team's demolitions expert, carrying enough explosives to level a building. Ghost 3, ready, Corporal Lee Minju said. She was their technology specialist, able to hack any computer system. One by one, all 12 soldiers reported ready. They had trained together for years and they trusted each other with their lives. Today they would need that trust more than ever. Teleportation field at maximum power, Captain Choi reported. Initiating transport in 3, 2, 1, now! The Ghost Company soldiers vanished in a flash of blue light. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Major Sun's voice crackled over the radio from inside the Vorthan flagship. We're in. The teleportation worked. We're in some kind of storage bay. Lots of confused lizards here, but we're handling them. The sound of gunfire came through the communication link. The Ghost Company soldiers were fighting their way through the enemy ship, heading for the command center where the execution controls were located. Ghost 2 to Major. Sergeant Kim's voice was strained. Heavy resistance ahead. They know we're here now. Keep moving. We didn't come this far to give up now. Meanwhile, Dr. Lee was making final preparations for the electromagnetic pulse. The research station's power core was never designed for this kind of overload, but she had modified it as much as possible. If her calculations were wrong, the explosion would kill her and everyone in the underground shelter. Keeper Veltar, she said to the Altarian leader, if this doesn't work, I want you to know that serving alongside your people has been an honor. Dr. Lee, the musical voice replied, your species came across the galaxy to help strangers. Whatever happens, we will remember that forever. On the Vorthon flagship, Ghost Company was fighting through corridors filled with enemy soldiers. Major Sun led from the front, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge laser beams and return fire with deadly accuracy. But they were taking casualties. Ghost 7 is down, Corporal Park Saiwan reported. Ghost 9 is wounded but still fighting. They reached the command center, but it was heavily defended. Dozens of Vorthan warriors stood between them and the execution controls. Major Sun looked at her remaining soldiers and made a decision that would haunt her final moments. Ghost Company, this is it. We go in hard and fast. Don't stop for anything. The prisoners are counting on us. The final assault was brutal and swift. The human soldiers fought with a fury that terrified even the battle-hardened Vorthons. Enhanced by their cybernetic implants and driven by their mission to save innocent lives, they carved through the enemy defenders like a sword through paper. But victory came at a terrible price. One by one, the Ghost Company soldiers fell. Major Sun watched her team die around her as she reached the execution controls. She was wounded in 3 places and could feel her strength fading. "Dr. Lee, trigger the pulse now," she shouted into her radio. On the planet's surface, Dr. Lee activated her modified power core. The electromagnetic pulse spread across the world like invisible lightning, disrupting every electronic device for thousands of kilometers. In the Vorthon ships above, millions of slave collars went dead. Major Sun used her last moments to broadcast the locations of every prisoner aboard the Vorthon fleet directly to the human ships. Then she triggered the explosives that Sergeant Kim had placed throughout the command center. "The children of Terra keep their promises," she whispered as the explosion consumed her. "Bring them home." The Vorthon flagship shuddered as its command center was destroyed. The battle began at dawn on the second Altarian world. The human fleet moved through the asteroid belt like ghosts, using the floating rocks to hide from Vorthon sensors. Admiral Kang Minho stood on the bridge of his flagship Indomitable, watching the tactical display as his ships got into position. "All units, this is Wolf Leader," he spoke into his communication device. "Execute Hydra Protocol. Hit them hard, hit them fast, and make them think we're everywhere at once." The plan was simple but dangerous. The human fleet would split into 7 groups and attack from different directions at the same time. This would confuse the Vorthons and make them spread their forces thin. The humans were outnumbered, but they had something the Vorthons didn't have. They were fighting to protect innocent people. Captain Nam Soo-hyun's voice crackled over the radio from the carrier Stormhawk. "Launching all fighters. My pilots are ready to show these lizards what human fury looks like." 200 fighter craft poured out of the carrier's launch bays. They were sleek ships called Reaper-class interceptors, built for speed and hitting power. Each one carried quantum torpedoes that could punch through the thickest armor. Pilot Bae Seo-hyun led the first squadron. She was only 24 but had already shot down 15 enemy fighters in previous battles. Her call sign was Ghost because she seemed to appear from nowhere when enemies least expected it. "Ghost Squadron, form up on me," she called to her wingmates. "We're going after their command ships. Let's make some noise." The fighters raced toward the Vorthon fleet at incredible speed. The Vorthons had been expecting an attack, but not from so many directions. Their sensors went crazy as human ships seemed to appear everywhere. Meanwhile, Captain Kim Tae-hyun's stealth destroyer Shadow Runner slipped behind the enemy lines. The Vorthons never saw him coming. His ship appeared suddenly among their supply vessels and began firing quantum torpedoes. 3 Vorthon transports exploded in seconds. "This is Shadow Leader," Captain Kim reported. "Supply lines cut. The lizards are starting to panic." But the main show was just beginning. Captain Choi Hee-jin's massive dreadnought Worldbreaker emerged from behind a large asteroid like an angry mountain. The ship was 3 kilometers long and armed with planet-killer weapons. When it fired its main guns, space itself seemed to scream. "Target their flagships," Captain Choi ordered her weapons officer. "Show them what happens when you mess with innocent people." The Worldbreaker's main cannon fired a beam of pure energy that could melt through a moon. The beam hit the largest Vorthon battleship dead center. For a moment, the enemy ship seemed to hold together, then it simply came apart, breaking into a million pieces that glowed like dying stars. The Vorthon fleet reacted like a kicked anthill. Ships that had been in neat formation suddenly scattered in all directions. Some tried to run, others turned to fight. Most just seemed confused. Admiral Keithvar, the Vorthon commander, screamed orders from his flagship Deathsclaw. He was a huge reptile with scales like black armor and eyes that glowed yellow with rage. He had conquered 12 worlds and enslaved millions of beings. He had never faced humans before. "All ships concentrate fire on the large human vessel," he roared. "Destroy it now!" 50 Vorthon ships turned their weapons toward the Worldbreaker. The space around Captain Choi's ship lit up with laser beams and missile trails. But the Worldbreaker was built to take punishment. Its shields held and it kept firing back. Pilot Lim Dongwoo, flying with the 2nd Fighter Squadron, dove through the enemy fire to attack a Vorthon cruiser. His call sign was Hammer because he hit his targets like a sledgehammer hits a nail. He fired his quantum torpedoes and watched the enemy ship's shields collapse. Hammer to all units, he called out. These lizards can't shoot worth a damn. Keep the pressure on. But the humans were paying a price for their aggressive attack. Commander O'Minje's destroyer. Lightning strike took a direct hit from 3 Vorthon heavy cruisers. The ship's hull cracked open like an eggshell, venting atmosphere and debris into space. This is lightning strike. Commander O's voice came over the radio, calm despite the disaster. We're losing life support. Engine room is gone, but we're not done yet. Instead of trying to escape, Commander O turned his dying ship toward the largest group of Vorthon vessels. He pushed his damaged engines to maximum power and rammed his destroyer into the middle of the enemy formation. The explosion took out 5 Vorthon ships and damaged a dozen others. Lightning strike is gone, Commander O's final transmission said, but the children of Terra do not yield. Remember us. The bridge of the Indomitable fell silent for a moment. These were the moments Admiral Kang hated most about command. Good people died following his orders, but their sacrifice would not be wasted. All units, this is Wolf Leader, he said, his voice steady despite the pain in his heart. Lightning strike showed us the way. Press the attack. Make their sacrifice count. On the surface of the second planet, Dr. Lee Ji-won crouched in the ruins of her research station, watching the battle through a makeshift telescope. Beside her, Keeper Veltar and 50 Altarian civilians huddled in the underground shelter they had built. Your people fight like demons, Keeper Veltar said, his musical voice full of wonder. We have never seen such courage. They're not fighting for glory, Dr. Lee replied. They're fighting for you. For all of you. Above them, another human ship was in trouble. The destroyer Stormbreaker was surrounded by Vorthon cruisers and taking heavy damage. Captain Park Jinwoo knew his ship was doomed, but he also saw an opportunity. The Vorthons had moved most of their fleet to fight the human attack. This left their ground installations lightly defended. Captain Park turned his ship toward the planet's surface and began targeting the slave processing centers. All ground installations are legitimate military targets, he announced. My ship is going down anyway. Might as well take some slavers with us. The Stormbreaker crashed into the largest Vorthon prison camp, its hull splitting open and its remaining weapons firing until the very end. The explosion destroyed the camp and freed thousands of Altarian prisoners. But the Vorthons were not helpless. They had been caught off guard, but they were experienced warriors. Admiral Kethvar began organizing his scattered fleet into a proper battle formation. Humans, he snarled into his communication device. You think you can defeat the might of the Vorthon Empire? We have conquered 100 worlds. Your tiny fleet means nothing. To prove his point, he ordered his heaviest ships to concentrate their fire on the human carrier Stormhawk. The ship was tough, but it couldn't stand up to that much punishment. Its shields flickered and began to fail. Captain Nam Soo-hyun felt her ship shake as enemy fire pounded the hull. All fighters, return to base immediately, she ordered. We need to get out of here. But many of her pilots were too far away to make it back. Pilot Bae Seo-hyun was deep in enemy territory, her fighter damaged and her fuel running low. She could try to escape or she could make one more attack run on the Vorthon flagship. Ghost Squadron, this is Ghost Leader, she said calmly. I'm going for the big one. If I don't make it back, tell my parents I died fighting for something that mattered. Her fighter turned toward Admiral Kethvar's massive flagship. The ship was 10 times larger than her tiny interceptor, bristling with weapons and protected by heavy shields. But she had noticed something during the battle. The flagship's main gun had a weakness. If she could hit the power coupling just right, Bae dove toward the enemy ship, dodging laser beams and missile explosions. Her fighter's hull was scarred and smoking, but it still flew. She lined up her shot, waited for the perfect moment, and fired her last torpedo. The quantum warhead struck the power coupling exactly where she aimed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Vorthon flagship's main weapon exploded, tearing a huge hole in the ship's hull. Admiral Kethvar's roar of rage could be heard across the battlefield. But Bae's fighter was caught in the explosion. Her ship tumbled through space, its engines dead and its life support failing. She managed to eject in an escape pod just before her interceptor broke apart. Ghost Leader is down, she reported weakly. But the flagship is hurting. Someone pick me up if you get a chance. The battle raged for hours. Ships on both sides were destroyed or damaged. The space around the second planet was filled with debris and bodies. But slowly the humans began to gain the upper hand. The Vorthons had more ships, but the humans fought with a fury that couldn't be matched. Every human ship that was destroyed took multiple Vorthon vessels with it. Every pilot who died made sure their death meant something. As the sun set on the second planet, the Vorthon fleet began to retreat. They pulled back toward the third world, dragging their damaged ships and their wounded pride with them. The first phase of the battle was over. Admiral Kang looked at the tactical display and felt both pride and sorrow. His fleet had won, but at a terrible cost. 20% of his ships were gone, and hundreds of good people had died. But the survivors were already working to rescue the freed Altarian prisoners and prepare for the next fight, because the battle was far from over. The Vorthons still had over 200 ships, and they still held millions of innocent people captive. The real test was yet to come. 6 months after the battle at Kepler 442, Admiral Kang Minho stood on a hill overlooking what had once been a Vorthon slave camp. Now it was a memorial garden, with crystal spires reaching toward the sky like frozen music. The Altarians had built it to honor the humans who died saving them. The hill was on the second planet, which the grateful Altarians had renamed Terra's Promise. The world was healing. Where there had once been prison camps, now there were schools and hospitals. Where there had been fear, now there was hope. "The names are all here," said Dr. Lee Jiwan, walking up to join him. She wore the blue robes of a Terran ambassador now, but she still remembered her time as a desperate researcher hiding in the ruins. Every human who died in the battle. "Major Sun Chae-young's name is at the top of the largest spire." Kang nodded, reading the names carved in crystal. Commander Oh Min-jae of the Lightning Strike, Captain Park Jin-woo of the Stormbreaker, all 12 members of Ghost Company, hundreds of others who had given their lives so that strangers could live free. "They would be proud of what this place has become," he said. The final battle had been terrible and beautiful at the same time. After Major Sun's sacrifice disabled the execution systems, the human fleet had rushed in to rescue the freed prisoners. Captain Choi Hyejin's Worldbreaker led the charge, its massive guns clearing a path through the confused Vorthon fleet. But Admiral Kethvar had one last desperate plan. As his fleet crumbled around him, he tried to trigger a quantum cascade that would destroy the entire star system. If he couldn't have his slaves, he would make sure no one could have anything. That's when Captain Yu Kangman of the battlecruiser Valiant made the ultimate sacrifice. Seeing the Vorthon superweapon charging up, he turned his ship directly toward it and pushed his engines to maximum power. "This is Captain Yu," his final transmission said. "Tell my wife and daughter that Daddy loves them. And tell them that he died protecting people who needed help." The Valiant struck the Vorthon superweapon at full speed. The explosion lit up space like a new star, destroying both ships instantly, but it also stopped the quantum cascade, saving billions of lives across the system. The surviving Vorthon ships surrendered shortly after. Their empire, built on the suffering of others, began to crumble as word of their defeat spread across the galaxy. Many of their former slaves rose up in rebellion, inspired by the story of the humans who had traveled so far to fight for strangers. Now, 6 months later, Kepler 442 was a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. The three worlds were rebuilding under the protection of a permanent human garrison. The Altarians and humans worked together, sharing knowledge and friendship. "Ambassador Lee," a musical voice called out. Keeper Veltar approached them, moving with the graceful gait of his people. He had grown old during the occupation, but his large eyes still sparkled with intelligence and kindness. "Keeper Veltar," Dr. Lee smiled. "How are the new students today?" "Eager to learn about their human friends," the Altarian replied. "Young Keeper Sillin asked me to tell her again about the brave warriors who came from the stars. I think she wants to be a fighter pilot when she grows up." Kang chuckled. The idea of peaceful Altarians becoming warriors seemed strange, but he understood the impulse. Sometimes good people had to learn to fight in order to protect what they loved. "The children should learn to defend themselves," he said, "but I hope they never have to use those skills." They walked down the hill toward the new city that was growing where the slave camp had been. Human and Altarian architecture blended together in beautiful ways. The buildings seemed to flow like water, but they were strong enough to withstand any storm. In the central plaza, a mixed group of human and Altarian children played together. They were learning each other's languages and games. Some of the human children were the sons and daughters of the soldiers who had stayed to help with the rebuilding. They would grow up as citizens of two worlds. "Admiral," Dr. Lee said as they walked, I've been monitoring communications from Earth. The Galactic Commerce Council has officially recognized humanity as a protector species. You're now authorized to intervene in conflicts to prevent genocide. Kang felt a weight settle on his shoulders. It was an honor, but it was also a responsibility. Somewhere in the galaxy, other innocent people might be crying out for help, and Earth's children would be expected to answer. They reached the communication center where Captain Kim Tae-hyun was reviewing the latest intelligence reports. His stealth destroyer Shadowrunner now served as the flagship of the permanent garrison. He looked up as they entered. Admiral, we're receiving reports of Vorthan slave camps on 12 different worlds. The locals are asking for help with liberation operations. And Captain Choi has volunteered to lead the task force. She says the Worldbreaker needs some exercise. Kang smiled. Captain Choi Hyejin had been promoted to Admiral after the battle, but she still preferred action to paperwork. Her dreadnought was being refitted with new weapons and better defenses, preparing for future missions. What about recruitment? He asked. More volunteers than we can handle, Captain Kim replied. Word of what happened here has spread. Young people throughout human space want to join the fleet that fights for others. We're having to turn away qualified applicants. That was good news, but it also worried Kang. He didn't want his fleet to become a magnet for glory seekers and war lovers. The humans who fought at Kepler 442 had been motivated by a desire to protect innocent people, not by a love of battle. Make sure the recruiters understand what we're about, he said. We're not conquerors. We're protectors. There's a difference. A new voice interrupted their conversation. It was coming from the long-range communications array, weak but clear. The signal was coming from the edge of explored space, from a region where few ships had ever traveled. This is High Contemplator Gelos of the Meditation Worlds, the voice said in accented galactic standard. Our people are few in number but ancient in wisdom. We have spent 1,000 years seeking peace and understanding, but peace has failed us. The transmission crackled with interference, but the desperation in the alien voice was clear. A species called the Devourers has found our worlds. They consume everything in their path, leaving only empty space behind. We have no weapons, no warriors, no way to resist them. We have heard stories of the children of Terra, the warriors who fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. The voice paused, and when it continued, it was barely a whisper. Please, if you can hear this message, help us. We are the last keepers of the ancient knowledge. If we fall, 1,000,000 years of wisdom dies with us. The children of Terra, please come. We need heroes. The communication center fell silent. Everyone looked at Admiral Kang, waiting for his decision. He thought of the memorial garden on the hill, where the names of good people were carved in crystal. He thought of the children playing in the plaza, human and Altarian together. He thought of all the innocent people throughout the galaxy who might be suffering while he stood safe in this room. Captain Kim, how long would it take to reach the meditation worlds? Unknown, sir. They're at the very edge of the galaxy. The journey could take 6 months, maybe longer, and we'd be going in blind, with no intelligence about enemy strength or capabilities. Yes, sir? Kang walked to the window and looked out at the city below. In the distance, he could see human and Altarian engineers working together to build something beautiful from the ruins of something terrible. That was what his people did best. They took broken things and made them whole again. Send a message to Fleet Command, he said finally. Tell them the Iron Wolf Squadron is ready for deployment. And contact Admiral Choi. Ask her if she's interested in hunting some Devourers. Captain Kim smiled and began working at his console. Within minutes, messages were racing toward Earth and to the other human fleets scattered across the galaxy. The call was going out for volunteers, for ships and supplies, for everything needed to mount another rescue mission. Dr. Lee came to stand beside Kang at the window. Another impossible mission to save people we've never met? That's what we do, he replied. That's who we are. On the hill above the city, the crystal memorial caught the light of the setting sun. The names of the fallen seemed to glow with inner fire, reminding everyone who saw them that some things were worth dying for. Freedom was one of those things. The right to live without fear was another. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, innocent people were waiting for heroes to come save them. And on a world called Terra's Promise, those heroes were already preparing to answer the call. The Iron Wolf Squadron would ride again, carrying with them the hopes and prayers of all free people everywhere. They would travel to the edge of the galaxy and beyond if necessary, Because that's what Earth's children did. They protected the innocent, they fought for the helpless, and they never ever gave up. The crystal spires sang in the wind, their music carrying across the rebuilt city like a promise. No matter how dark the night became, no matter how impossible the odds seemed somewhere in the galaxy, Earth's deadliest warships were listening for the cry of those in need, and they would always answer.